this video, we're going to do a quick intro to Onshape. So you will need to log in, and once you log into Onshape, we're going to click on Create a New Document, and you'll be all set. I have one that I'm going to work with here, so I'm going to go to that particular document. All right, so once you create your new document, you're going to land in what we call a part studio that looks very similar to this. So just going to give you the lay of the land here. We have our design window. In this design window, you'll see our three principal planes, the front, the right, and the top plane. You'll also see the origin here in the middle. We have our cube up here. The cube is going to allow us to kind of manipulate the view. So if you simply click and hold on, if you click on different faces of the cube, you can rotate the view to look at, head on to like the front view or the left view, etc. You can also click on corners so that you can get an isometric view, or rotate as you see here with the arrows in any direction that you want. You can also use your arrow keys on the keyboard to rotate the view in any direction that you want. And my favorite is using the mouse. The mouse is has quite a few nice little shortcuts here. So for example, if I hold the right click, so if I right click and hold, you'll see that I can move my mouse around and rotate on the screen. If I use the roller in the middle of the mouse, you'll see that I can zoom in and zoom out. And just a tip, it zooms into wherever the mouse is on the screen. So if I put it here on the T, you'll see that we zoom into towards the T. Okay, and then zoom out. And then if you press and hold the roller, you can move, pan and kind of move around the screen that way. All right. So I highly suggest using a mouse for all of this. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see we have our features kind of menu. It shows the top, front, right plane. This little eyeball here shows that that means the plane is visible. So you can turn that on and off if you see fit. Below that, we have this blank space, and as we start to build parts, the history of those parts, in other words, the progression that we make in the process of making those parts, whether it be sketches or extrusions and whatnot, all of that's going to show up over here, and we can always go back in and edit different parts of the progression. So that makes it really nice. And then down here at the bottom, this is going to keep track of all the different parts that we create in this one part studio. So we can create multiple parts, and we'll do that here in just a minute. Across the top, we have our toolbar. These are all just for 3D tools right now, but we'll be using the 2D tools here in the sketch. Okay, so let's start sketching. So I'm going to click up here on the sketch plane, or the sketch button. And when you do that, you'll see that it says right now, select a sketch plane. And over here on the little sketch menu, it tells us to do the same thing. It says, what sketch plane do you want to sketch on? So anytime we have something that's highlighted in blue, whether that be items here on the toolbars or here in the menus, that's requesting information from you, or it's waiting to do something. So we're going to go ahead and just click the front plane. Well, I accidentally clicked it on the right plane, so let me take that off, and I'll choose the front plane. And I'm going to click on, or I'll just click that on the front side, and now we're looking directly at the front plane. So there's my sketch. You can see sketch 1, and now we're going to leave this dialog open until we are done sketching. And when we're done sketching, we're going to hit the green check and finalize the sketch. Okay, so once we get going here, we're going to start with some basic tools and basic shapes. So we have lines, so it's simply click and click, and then you'll see it wants to draw the next line. If you don't want to, you can hit escape. We can do various types of rectangles, so a corner to corner rectangle, center point. So I'm going to use a center point, and I'm going to use the origin and make a rectangle there. We have the circle tool. Again, some different options there: center point circle, 3-point circle, or an ellipse. For our purpose, we're just going to use the center point circle. Put one there. And then we have the arc. Different types of arcs that we can use. Probably the most common is the 3-point arc, and that basically, to use that, we would click the starting point, click an end point, and then use your mouse just kind of wherever you want, and then whenever you get the desired radius, you click, and it draws the arc. Okay. A couple things you're going to need to note here. Number one is you can see that when we get a closed shape, you'll see that it's filled in. So that is something we want to see. When you have things like this, like the arc here and the line, they are not closed shapes. You can't really do much. You can do some things with it in the 3D view, but generally speaking, we're going to want to have to be able to work with closed shapes. In addition to that, so let's say that I make a closed shape here. I'm going to put a line tool here. Let's say that I do something like this. Okay, if I do something like this, and you'll see students do this often, but here I do have a closed shape, but I have these lines that are hanging off. In other words, they don't end at the same point. And that could cause some problems later on in the 3D section. So we have the trim tool here that will basically trim it back to the closing point. So we'll click that, and we'll click this, and you can see that now they are trimmed back to the appropriate point, and we're good to go there. So the trim tool is very handy as well, especially like, for example, if we're doing something like this, and then maybe we have a section that looks like that. Like I don't need all these lines on the inside, so I can click and you'll see it'll trim back to the next line, trim back to the next line, and we're good to go. So you can make some interesting shapes and parts out of it using the basic shapes and then the trim tool to help you out. But in the end, like I said, you're going to want to have a shaded region there to be able to work in the 3D. Okay. All right. So let's move into kind of some different constraints here. So many times when you're creating these parts, parts are going to need to be specific sizes. Okay, so we have what's called the dimension tool here. The dimension tool allows us to place dimensions on various aspects, features, locations, etc. for the parts. So to use that, simply click on the dimension button there, or you can push D on your keyboard, and I'll show you a couple different ways you can use this. So first way would just be to click on a line, and when I click, you'll see that the dimension shows up, and I have to place the dimension. So I'm going to move this away from the part, click, and then it says, do you actually want this to be 3.69? And I can edit the dimension. I'll say, no, really, it's only supposed to be 3.5. Hit enter, and you can see that it adjusts. So now the whole thing shrunk a little bit. It's 3.5, and we can do the same thing with the side. Another way to do it, so that was just by clicking on the line, and it dimensioned that line. You can also go from point to point or from line to line. So I'll say, I'll click here, and again, it wants to show 3.5, but I'll say, I want to go from here, and then click here to here. And you'll see that it changed it. It's now 2.63, so we'll go, maybe this is 2.5, hit enter, shrunk it up again, and now this is the appropriate size for the part I'm trying to create. All right, other ways you can use this is on circular features. So like if I click on the outer edge of the circle, you'll see that it gives me a diameter. Maybe this is supposed to be a 2-inch diameter. So that little diameter symbol shows that it's a diameter, 2 inches. And then for an arc, it'll automatically give the radius. So we have radius, we have diameter, we have width and height for these particular things here. One shortcut I will give you, especially when you're just using the line tool, you can use it with some of the basic shapes as well. But nice little feature is, say I want to draw a line here, you'll notice that it gives you the dimension as you're drawing this. So I'll say like, all right, I'm going to draw this horizontally there. And when I click to place the point, you see the little box showed up. Okay, now I'm not going to click again. So if I click again, this little box is going to go away. But so let me redo that here, undo. So if I click once, go to my desired, roughly, or at least in the direction that I want to go, click there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and type in 4. And you'll see that it goes into that box, hit enter, and it drew it at 4 inches, and it placed the dimension on there for me. So that's a nice way to do that. I can say 1.5, enter, and you can kind of like, get these dimensions put in as you're drawing, and it makes it go pretty quick, which is nice. All right. So again, those are what we call dimension constraints. You can use dimension constraints for size, for maybe location of a feature. So maybe we have like a little circle or something that's inside of this, right? And then we can dimension and say from here to here, right? Put and say I want this to be 1 inch away, so on and so forth. Whatever you want to do with that. But also you'll notice that, like for example, when I click on this, it turns blue. So that means it's still trying to dimension. So if I dimension this line here, say that's fine, you'll see that it's still highlighted blue. It still wants to dimension other things. So we can clear that by hitting the escape key or by clicking on the button again, and it will go away. So I'm just going to hit escape, and you'll see that goes away, and now I have the regular pointer, and I can do whatever I need to do. I can select other tools. Okay. All right, so that's just one of the types of constraints that we can put on there is these linear constraints. Another really handy type of constraint that we can use is a geometric constraint. And those are right here. And I already have a Part Studio set up here to kind of show these. But here in the Part Studio, I've got all these different lines drawn. And I'm going to go into the sketch. So I already drew this, like I said earlier. You can see the sketch in my history. So this is where the history of the part is going to be. So I'm just going to double click on this, and it's going to take me back into that sketch. So I can make edits to the sketch at any point. Okay, so a geometric constraint doesn't assign values. Rather, it works with some of the geometric properties. So for example, we could make things, and some of these you'll be familiar with, like parallel, for example. I could make 2 lines just parallel to each other. I don't need any numbers, but it will make the 2 lines parallel to each other. And so I've got all these set up so that we can kind of look at the different geometric constraints. So here is coincident, and coincident just takes 2 points and puts them together. So it makes them the same point. So I'll click here, and you'll see that they are now connected, and that is the meeting point for those 2 lines. So that's a pretty easy one. The next one's concentric. I can make this circle concentric to this one. In other words, put these 2 center points together inside of the circle. So I'll say this one, and the circles are now concentric. Next one, parallel. It's pretty easy. Click, click. All right, we've got tangent, and I've got a couple different ones set up here for tangent. The first one here is this. I have this this arc and this line. So I can say I want this and this tangent to each other. Okay, and it did do that, but I'm going to place a coincident and make those 2 the same. And now you can see it goes straight from this line right into the curve, and this is a tangent surface there, which is good. The other one looks like I must have deleted my line there. Okay, the other one would say maybe I want the edge of this circle tangent to this line. So I'll go back to tangent, click the circle, click the line, and you can see that it makes those two tangent to each other. So that's just two different ways. You can do the same thing with circles. I can say here and here, and you can see the two circles are tangent to each other as well. Okay, next one, horizontal. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I could say maybe make this line horizontal, so it does that. And vertical, same thing. Perpendicular. If I wanted to use perpendicular, right? I want to make this line perpendicular to this one, so we'll just change that. Perpendicular, boom, boom. There they are. Okay. Equals. I could say I want this circle and that circle same size. We could do the same thing with other different lines here as well, but that's just a handy little tool. Midpoint. I want this point to be on the midpoint of that line. We've got normal too. I don't have an example for that, but it's basically like perpendicular. And then symmetric. This is a good one. Symmetric, I'll use like multiple geometric constraints on this to kind of turn this into an arrow. But let's say, for example, let's do coincident. I want these 2 points to be together. I want this point and this point to be together. I want the symmetric tool, and I want this side and this side of the arrow to be the same. So I'm going to click the two sides that I want symmetric, so it'll be this line and this line, and then I have to choose what they're going to be symmetric around. So that would be the center line here. You can see that they are symmetric now, but they are not the same. I mean, they're same angle and the same meeting point, but they're not the same length. So I can change that to equal and click those two, and you'll see that there we have it. So again, these are great little constraints that help us helps with the efficiency in the workflow, but again, just very handy. A couple things to note with these though. You can put as many geometric constraints as you want as long as it all works out, meaning that you don't have conflicting constraints, then everything should be good. But the one thing that you will run into from time to time is you need to pay attention to, I should say, is that as you're drawing, the program automatically senses some of these geometric constraints and puts them in for you. So for example, I've got this line that I'm drawing here, and you can see that as soon as I make that line horizontal, it puts the symbol there for the horizontal constraint. So if I click on that now and I placed it, you'll see that when I hover over it, it shows the horizontal constraint. So if I grab this point, you can see it always stays horizontal. Okay, whereas some of these other ones, that doesn't have a horizontal constraint, so it's free to move in whatever direction you want to go. But maybe I didn't want that. Maybe I did that on accident. So what you can do is simply hover over the line. You'll see the geometric constraint, click on it, and hit delete. And as soon as you do that, you'll see that that constraint is gone. Probably the biggest thing that happens to most people with these kind of like unintended geometric constraints is when it's around the origin or even other points. So for example, if I were going to come up here and draw a line, you'll see that I'm even with this point right there. So if I click right here, this point is where I click is always going to be horizontal to this point here. Same thing happens here. See the origin highlight? It shows the horizontal sign. When I click and say maybe go there, you'll see that the horizontal constraint exists, so I can move this thing like that, and I can move it around, but if I try to go up and down, this point and this point will always be horizontal. So just something to keep in mind as you're working with sketches and placing these geometric constraints. Okay, so let me go back here to the Part Studio, and we're going to kind of look here, add a few little things in, and then we're going to go to our 3D, take these 2D sketches up to a 3D model. All right, so the next one I want to put in here is a fillet. Okay, a fillet is just simply taking two edges or a corner and rounding it over. So I can, instead of making this a square corner, we can click on fillet, and I can click this line, and you'll see that it's going to round it over, and it rounds it over with a radius of 0.35. So if I click in there, you have to double click, I can make it 0.5, hit enter, and you'll see that there it is. It places a 0.5 radius and kind of trims off those the corner there. If that is, so again, you'll notice that was still highlighted. If I hit escape, I can double click on the radius and maybe make it a 0.25. And you'll see it automatically adjusts. So nice little tool there to use for putting these little fillets on different parts. And you can do that with anything. So like here, if I want to put one in the triangle, there it is, 0.5, that's fine, hit enter, and there it is. So it rounded over that corner as well. It doesn't have to be a 90-degree corner. Okay. Finally, in here, while we're looking at the 2D sketch, a lot of times you're going to want to be able to put text in. Okay, so I'll show you the text tool. When you click on that, you start by drawing the box that the text is going to go in. So I'll say, like, from here, I'm going to click once. I'm going to move my mouse over. I'm going to click again. And then the dialog box pops up, so we can type in hello. You can adjust your font. You can flip the text, so you can see maybe if I'm going to draw on the back of something, we need to turn that text around. Or you can do vertical as well. So I'm going to leave those turned off, and then I'm just going to hit the check. When I do that, you'll see that it automatically fits the text inside of that box. maybe this is too big, maybe it's too small, whatever it is. So if that's the case, we're going to simply click on dimension, and you're going to be able to dimension in one of two directions. So like if, you know, let's say this part, this has to fit across the face of the part. So maybe I want to deal with the width. Okay, so if I want to deal with the width, maybe this needs to be 10 inches. I'll hit enter and it'll automatically shrink that text down. But what it will not let you do is shrink it in the width and also mess with it in the height. So as soon as I say, well, I really want it to be 3 inches tall, you'll see that it gives me an error and it's not going to let me do anything with this. So it'll only let you shrink it either in height or width, not both. So I'm going to have to Control Z and undo that and get rid of that dimension in order for this to not have any issues when we go into the 3D side. Okay, so I've got pretty much, we covered most of our little shapes here. The polygon tool, I'll do one of these just to show you, but we can just put it's basically drawing a circle, and then it wants to know right here how many sides. So I'll just say 10, right now it says 10, okay, but we can do a couple things. I'm gonna hit escape to get out of the polygon tool. I'm gonna hit D to dimension, and I'm gonna make the radius of this 3. And then I'm also gonna hit escape to get out of the dimension tool, double click on this and make it 6. And you'll see, there we go. So you can adjust it however you want and make different polygons. Spline tool, something's a little interesting as well. It's basically a kind of a organic line. You see that it moves as you adjust it. So the more points you put, the more you can kind of adjust. Okay, but the idea is, there we go, we got a closed shape. We can also adjust these. So like I can grab and move that, and you'll see it affects the points behind it and ahead of it. Okay, good enough. All right, so I'm done sketching. There are a few other tools in here. We won't worry about those right now, but we're going to go ahead and hit the green check, signifying that we're done with the sketch. Once we're done with the sketch, you'll see if I rotate this, they are like infinitely thin little drawings. And so now we are going to turn these into, let's go to the isometric view. We're going to turn these into 3D parts. So these are our 3D tools. For this video, we're going to focus on the most basic one, which is the extrude. And the extrude allows us to choose a closed shape and extrude it out, meaning like bring it out into an actual part. So I'm just going to click on the parts that I want to work with here. You'll notice that when I chose this one, it did not choose the circle. If I want to choose the circle, I can click on it, or I can click on it and deselect it. But I'm just going to choose a couple of these here, and then I'll come back for these here in a little bit. All right, when we choose our parts, we have a couple different options here to work with. It's not going to let you change from new to add or remove or any of that yet, because these are original parts. So new is going to be the only option, and solid is what you're going to want to use for now. And this controls the depth. So I can do like 2 inches, hit enter, and you'll see that it previews that. I can simply grab the arrow and I can move that out, maybe even change directions. Okay, so I'll put that there. Change directions would be this way here, click, and it automatically does that. And then we can also control the depth by just putting in, I'm going to put in 2 and hit enter. All right, so I'm done there. I'm gonna hit check, and you can see that it created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts, and those parts are documented right here. So if we hover over part 3, you'll see that that's the blue cylinder, so on and so forth. Okay, we can always go back and edit, but one thing that you'll notice that it did not do is it did not extrude the hello or our weird shape over there. In fact, now that we've done the extrusion, the sketch disappeared. Okay, if we wanted to be able to see that sketch again or do other things with it, we can click on this little eyeball and that sketch will show back up, and we can do additional extrusions with that. So maybe all of those are supposed to be 2 inches, but then these two are supposed to be 3 inches. Okay, so I would have to do 2 different extrusions for that. So, okay, so again, like I said earlier, blue box, we clicked extrude. Blue box wants to know what sketches or what faces do we want to extrude. So what I'm going to do is this, just to show you the difference between a sketch and a face. So if I choose the sketch face and then, or the part face, that's two different things. So here you can see when I hover over hello, everything is highlighted. So if I click that, and then maybe we make this, I'm going to exaggerate it and make it 6. Look at what it did. It grabbed all of those parts as well. Okay, and I don't want to do that. I only want to do hello and then this weird part here. So I can uncheck, I can, clear that off. And then now I'm going to make sure that I don't grab everything. I'm going to have to grab individual pieces. So I'm going to choose this one. And then I'm going to have to kind of zoom in here, and you see how I can either grab all of hello, that's not good, or just the O, grab the O, just the L, just the other L, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll make sure we get those individually. All right, there we go. We'll set these to 3 inches and check. Okay, so we created several new parts, so we're up to 12 parts here in this particular part studio. All right, so moving forward, now that we have these original parts in place, we can start adding and taking things away from these parts. Okay, so before what we did was we hit sketch and we chose a plane. We can still do that. We can click sketch and we can, choose a plane to draw on, but maybe I don't want to draw on those planes anymore. Maybe I want to draw on this particular part out here. So what I'll do is I'll hit sketch, I'll choose out here, and then we're going to put a hole through this one here. So now I'm sketching on this surface. I'm going to choose a circle, and we're going to put a hole right there. I'm going to hit the green check, and we're going to go back again to extrude. Now, if I choose new, so here's where we have some options to add into the extrusion. So if I choose new and I choose just the circle, not the whole face there, but the circle, you'll see that it's going to add material out. But if I leave it on new, it's going to be, so here I have, that's going to be part 13. Okay, so that means it's going to be two separate parts between this weird looking part and this little cylinder. If I click add, then it becomes part of this one. So it's the same piece of material. If I click remove, you'll see it flips directions and cuts a hole. So it actually removes material. Again, we have the arrow, so I can make the hole go all the way through. If you get the red, you'll see like I'm trying to remove, but I'm trying to go this way, so there's no material to remove. So simply flip directions, and that'll fix that. We can choose, if we're removing something, we can choose different types. I can say blind, which means go a certain distance. That would be good for like, I only want to go halfway through, so we'll make that a blind hole, and it's going to be 1.5. So it only goes through half of the part. Okay, I could do up to face, so I could say start here, and then I want the hole to go to here, and you can see that it does. And then there's a few others that you can kind of figure out as you go. Through all means just go all the way through, so on and so forth. So nice little tools for that. Then if you want to choose intersect, if I use intersect, what will happen is it'll make the hole or the material there, it'll only keep what we drew. So if I hit check, you'll see the only thing that's there is the circle, the cylinder. So I'll go back into the extrusion again, and we're going to hit remove. And there we go. So now I got the part with the hole in. Okay, so so again, different things that you can do with the extrusion tool right there. So you can really do quite a bit with that. There are some other tools that we'll cover in additional videos, but all right. So one last tool that we're going to use here is the fillet tool. The fillet tool is right here. So we did this in the 2D sketch, but you can also do this here in the 3D as well. So I would just simply choose this fillet. The dialog pops up. We can change our radius. I'm going to leave it at 0.35 for now. I'm going to choose, say, this edge and this edge. You can see that it rounds that over. Maybe we want to make that smaller. Hit enter, and you'll see that it adjusts it. And we can do that on anything in here. So I can say there, and then maybe change that one to 0.35. But you'll notice that when I change that one, this one also adjusts. So if I need two different size fillets, we'll have to do two separate fillets. So I'll get rid of that one. I'm going to move this back to 0.125, and then hit check, and then we'll do another fillet for this one, and that one's going to be 0.35, and then check. All right, so we have two different size fillets to work with there. Okay, so that is some basic intro to Onshape. Further videos are going to go a little bit more detailed into some more complex tools or some things that you can do with 3D tools.